Welcome to North Node, the Yoga and Astrology podcast. I'm Becky, a yoga teacher, astrologist, and businesswoman.
And I'm Laura, founder of Soul Sanctuary Studios, yoga teacher trainer, and wellness coach and consultant. In this podcast, we'll be diving into down-to-earth but deep soul conversations.
We'll explore how you can connect and stay on purpose with your true north alignment through the transformative lenses of yoga and astrology.
Each episode is designed to inspire and guide you on your own journey towards self-discovery, self-love, and personal growth. We'd really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform. Your support will help us reach more listeners who are looking for insightful discussions and meaningful connection.
Thanks so much for joining us. Now, let's dive into today's episode. So welcome to today's episode where we're going to be talking about holidays and like how they really crack us open. So I've recently been on holiday with my family to Cyprus, and Laura is just back from being away with her husband on a trip to the States. So yeah, we've both been feeling a lot, moving through a lot, and we thought this was a really good topic to bring to our podcast. So yeah, I feel like asking you, Laura, let's start with your holiday. How did it go? What do you feel to share?
Well, I think this is a great suggestion from you, Beck. And I was away, and I was literally like, I've got so much to say on this. And we've like briefly touched on this before, I think, when I went to Turkey and had like some moments of, like realization about myself. So there's definitely a pattern because it did happen again. And this was a really short trip. So it was like 5 days away. It was 7 days in total with travel either side. And there was a lot for me in this trip. We went because it was a wedding. It was Adam's friend's wedding. And it meant leaving the kids because there weren't kids allowed at the wedding, which already for me was like, I was massively triggered. And for a long time, I'd sort of decided that I wasn't going to go. And then there's that wrestle, isn't there, of like, oh, but they need to know that they're okay on their own without you, and it'll be really good for them, and you guys need this break as a couple, and all of this. And because of the position that we're in and the way that we're living with our in-laws anyway, so like we were living with Adam's mum, they were going to be in their own beds, like not loads was going to change, they were going to nursery, all the same stuff. It was just that Adam's mum was going to be doing it rather than me. And she was really convincing, and I just went for it, basically. And then when I decided that and we booked the flights, I was like, I just had this fear, this countdown in my stomach for like all the way until the day that we went. And I cried all the way from leaving them in the house to the airport, which from Devon to Heathrow is a fairly long drive. And, long and short of that is that they were absolutely fine. And what there was a lot of time for Adam and I to be together without kids. And that is, Lenny's 4.5. It's been 4.5 years since we've really had like any period of time like that. We go out for dinner, but mostly talk about the kids or work or business or houses or whatever. And, of course, there's moments where you don't, but, 7 days is quite a long time together when, you've had kids and haven't had that for a while. And so I was really excited because we have this realization that when Adam gets stressed, he shuts down and badly. Like once upon a time, I said it was a bit like living with a stone man, and now that has kind of carried through, which I feel bad about. But it does explain like how it feels sometimes. So he just emotionally shuts down when he can't cope. And I've learned that it's not about me. It's not me that he's pissed off with. He's just stressed, and that's okay. Like you give him distance. But there's always something to be stressed about, right? And so the result of that is that we've spoken about before, like sometimes we lack connection in our relationship, and we, and I think like all couples, I hope, like you work at that, right? You take time to be together and try not to be stressed and kind of be loving despite stress. So that's something that we work on. And I was like, great, like this is holiday. We're not going to be stressed. So there's going to be loads of connection. This is going to be lovely. And there wasn't stress, but it was like really interesting to observe. So first of all, we were just like, I was worried about the kids, so that's fine. There was a bit going on there. Then we got on the plane. I mean, it's over 11 hours from England to LA. And it just made me laugh because like we sat down, we plugged in our headphones and we started watching films, which, any kind of parent will know is an absolute luxury. Like I haven't watched a film from start to finish, God, I don't know how long. And then we were like 9 and a bit hours in, and I was like, oh my God, we haven't spoken. And that hadn't even crossed Adam's mind because whatever, he was just enjoying the time. And I was like, I think this is fine. Like, it's so nice just to have space and peace and quiet, like no dramas. But I had like squeezed his leg a couple of times just to instigate some sort of conversation. He just sort of smiled and carried on watching his film, and I was like, okay. So then, in some sort of interval where he's between films, I like made a passing comment that I was like, babe, do you realise in like 10 out of the 11 hours we haven't even spoken? And he sort of like, it took him by surprise. He got a bit defensive because he probably knew that like we're not connected was going to come along, and he was like, I think that's okay. Like, no one else is having like DMCs and blah, 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 like panicked. And I was like, no, it's fine. I just, isn't it funny that like it's all we've wanted and we've had like 10 hours and we haven't done it yet. But, you know, it's nice to have space and stuff. And he was like, yeah. So that it sort of started like that. And then as the holiday went on, I think my expectation, I think this is a lot about holidays, is expectation versus reality. So I expected that almost like a honeymoon. I mean, we didn't even have a honeymoon. So I was, because of COVID, so I was kind of like overly expecting this to be this really like loving, connected time. And I guess, 4.5 years later, and you're just like wanting some space to yourself from the kids. And also, it was super busy. We were traveling a lot. All his friends were like wherever we went, which was so fun. But it was like a friends group trip rather than a honeymoon, right? Obviously, and I should have known that. But yeah, my expectations versus reality were really different, and it was just highlighting like disconnection for me was the main thing. And annoyingly, like the night of the cocktails before the wedding, we ended up having an argument about it because it was another whole night where we'd barely spoken, and he was getting a lot of attention. And I'm not insecure about that stuff normally, but it just felt a bit rough that like we were at a friend's wedding and he hadn't tried to look after me at all. I can deal with that a little bit, but it just felt a little bit like unkind at times. And I couldn't hold that back, which is a shame, I suppose. But, it's really hard to be fake in that way. So I did say it, and then it sort of ruined the night, which was a shame. And I take that on the chin, like maybe I shouldn't have mentioned it until we got home or something, but it was just how I felt. Yeah. And then, so then it was the wedding day, and it was beautiful, beautiful day. And we're fine. Like, we'd gone for a walk and we'd sorted stuff out. But obviously, then he was being really over the top about like checking in and like, I don't know. It all just felt a bit forced, I suppose is the word. So it brought up a lot. And I said to my friend who we were traveling with at the end, like, we're fine. We function so well as a team when we're home. Like, we're so busy and we function really well like that. But like when we've got space, I think like it just, yeah, sometimes it shows that we have stuff to work on. And she was like, yeah, like it feels like maybe cracks show when you've got more time. And that interestingly is what is like come up in our research, which I'm sure we'll get to, Beck, won't we? But that's when Becky then messaged me, was like, should we do it on holidays? I was like, yes, there is so
Mm.
much to say about holidays. And I know, Beck, so you've recently been to Cyprus, and I mean, it was a different experience, but you still came across challenges, right?
Yeah, so we went on a family holiday. So it was me and Steve and the two girls. And I mean, the pressure for me was a lot before we went on holiday. Yeah, because, I work full time, got the two kids, I'm teaching yoga, doing all the things. And I just sometimes don't enjoy going on a holiday because of like all the work that it takes to get you there. Like you've got to plan the trip and all of that and take responsibility for that. But then it's like you've got to pack or, first of all, you've got to check all your kids' clothes fit, buy new clothes, make sure they're all washed and all of that, pack the bags, find the passports, sort the car park, at the airport, who's going to feed the cat while you're away, all of these things that, in my household fall on me. And I think that's probably the case for a lot of women who are going to be listening to this podcast. So it's like just getting ahead with work as well, making sure that all the urgent things are dealt with. Um, there's a big, big load before you go on holiday, and it feels like a marathon before you even get on the plane. So there's that. And that can leave me in quite a resentful place before I even get there. And yeah, and there's not often a lot of gratitude around that. the kids are kids. So I'm not saying I expect that from them. And, and I do involve them. Like Hannah's really good. She's 13. She packed all her stuff. She wrote me a list of like the toiletries that she wanted me to buy her. Like she was on it. But yeah, there's not a lot of gratitude around all of the work that goes into that. And it's such an unseen load. So yeah, I felt quite resentful before we even got away. And then we get in the car. Steve's always really stressy before we get in the car. Oh, like his watch broke this time or something. And he was like, kept looking at his watch. We'd got in the car. And I'm thinking, if you need to go and like get a different watch, will you just please go and do that? So, and then he does that. And then he's like, oh, I'm going to half draw the curtains and shut the front door. And so I'm like, "Ugh," you know, feeling quite irritated before we even set off. We set off, and I don't feel like saying a lot in the car then because I realize that I'm irritated and I just need to like let that pass. So for me, there's a lot around going on holiday, and it's one of the reasons I don't enjoy travel a lot since I've had kids. That, and also, even if I go away on my own, I'm going away in a few weeks with my mum actually to the spa just for a couple of nights. And I just know I'm going to have got all the food ready, organize what the kids are doing. Yeah, it just feels like a lot. Um, and also I want to be clear, like I'm not fully putting all of this on Steve. Like that has been the patterns in our relationship for, the whole time we've been together. And yeah, like it's the way it is to a certain extent that yeah, if we're going to change things, like that's on me as well. But sometimes it's just easier to do it yourself as well. So yeah, there's a lot for me on go about going on holiday, and then I'm the one with the passports. I'm the one that knows when we get to the airport, etc., etc. So it just feels like a holiday for me. I already hold like a lot in terms of leadership in my life. And going on holiday feels like just continuing that level of leadership, where everyone else gets to relax. And yeah, we decided while we were away that we were going to go on a trip. So it's like, again, I'm organizing the trip. We decided to go into like the town one day. It's me that has to like get an app to then book a taxi. Yeah, it's just never ending. So for me, holidays don't feel like a break at the moment when I've got kids. And yeah, so I just want to bring that to the table really and say, if anyone else is feeling like that, yeah, just normalize it a bit really. Because like you said, holidays, there's this expectation of like having a really joyful, connected experience. And for me, they can massively increase my stress levels, which means they don't always feel like a restful or a connected experience.
Yeah, I totally hear you back. And when we were researching for this podcast, like it was so interesting from a psychology perspective, saying exactly that, saying that there's usually a dynamic in a couple where one is kind of doing the organizing and the other is not. And that holidays really emphasize that because there's stuff to do. It's an unknown area, like, you want to see the best of it. So research, planning, booking, all of that stuff has to go on. And if one person is already burnt out from doing that, but the pattern is that they do it, like, that is gonna create resentment. So yeah, it's about being aware of these things, isn't it? And for me, a lot of it is expectation management and, I guess where it's possible is having those conversations beforehand. But when these patterns are so deeply entrenched, when you've been married for years and years and years, it's like even conversations about it aren't really going to help the default setup, are they?
Mm-mm. Yeah, exactly. And I think when you're the one carrying the backpack of like all those things that you just carry in your brain all the time, it's actually really hard process to transfer that over to someone else, right?
Yeah.
And for Steve, it's always that thing, well, yeah, you're just better at it. And I always come back to, yeah, it's because I've done it my whole life, you know?
Exactly. It's hard. We talk about this a lot in yoga teacher training, isn't it? Often, like the people who come to the training are like, it has taken me, and we always acknowledge it on the first day, like so much to be able to take that time to do that training in an in-person training, and especially so we run an intensive, which is one full week, and then you go away for a week and you come back for the weekend, you go away for a week, and then you come back for a whole week. And for people to try and get what that is 10 days annual leave, it's like 14 days of contact is huge, and it's often they are our women doing it. And for them to step away from the house for like 2 weeks, albeit that they're not 2 consecutive weeks, often the first week they're like, this feels impossible and I'm so curious to see what happens. But really interestingly, do you know, Beck, is like that second week they come back and it's like there's a whole new dance going on. Like we're dancing a different dance because I had to step out. And this is the thing, isn't it? That it's that like unless we're forced to do stuff sometimes, like whether that's a wedding or whether that's a training or whatever, the habitual patterns just continue. And it does take so much to kind of somebody just step different and go, yeah, let's do something different and see what happens. But, sometimes holidays just set us back into those defaults, don't they? And when you're already exhausted, like that can be something really triggering.
Yeah, for sure. And then I think also, like, while you're away, you're out of your normal patterns again, aren't you? You're not doing the usual things, taking the kids to school, going to work, the normal day-to-day routine that you're in. And some of that is like I love not having to cook. I love not having to clean. And it feels amazing when I'm away. But then it's also like it opens up all this space. And that can feel really vulnerable, I think.
I totally agree. And for me, like relationships aside, so we've spoken about that and what holidays can do for that. But for me personally, I've spoken before about I distinctly remember this time when I was quite young. I was just doing my teacher training and I was in Bali, and I was with my partner at the time. And it was paradise. I was like looking at this turquoise sea. We'd been snorkeling with turtles, and I was honestly, I was trying to hold the tears back because I felt so sad. And that it really highlighted, gosh, there's a problem with you. If you're sad here, then you've really got to sort this out, right? It was like the most depressed I'd been because I was expecting to be the happiest I'd ever been. And of course, all my internal stresses were still there. And so it highlighted that stuff to me. And sometimes holidays, because I do busy myself from myself, I think we all do in some ways. When we're forced to slow down, I often have those like real and existential moments of going like, do I want to do what I'm doing? Do I want to live where I'm living? And that those questions are really destabilizing sometimes. I find that. And as somebody who loves routine, like I thrive off routine and structure, as much as I crave a break and like do adventure and doing something different, I feel really destabilized. And then when you throw in some of these bigger questions, I mean, so many people at this wedding were they'd lived in Singapore. I mean, a couple had moved from Singapore to Peru because why not? Let's have an adventure for 2 years. Some of them were in Switzerland. They were all over the place. One of them was in LA and she was a teacher in the Palisades, which had burnt down. And, there was just so many incredible stories. And I loved that. I loved like I was asking so many questions to everyone about their life and what does Monday look like? Like I'm so curious about how other people live. But all the time I'm going, wow, like that's a really big life, And I like put her back home to Devon and I love my life and I don't there's nothing that I'd want to do differently. Like I come back here, I'm running on the beach, the sun is shining, like we're doing the houses, I'm doing yoga, like what more could I want? But it just throws so many questions into the works of like what a different life could be like. Even being abroad, looking at how different people live and the different shops and the different plants and the animals. And because it's different, it's kind of shiny and exciting and it just makes me question everything. And on one hand, I think that's beautiful because we should have our horizons broadened and our mind opened, and think that there is more out there than the way that we live. And on the other hand, it's almost like it gives me too many options, like too many questions. And both Adam and I came back and we were like, are we playing small? Like, do we need to play bigger? Like what, like do we want life to just pass us by and or what do we want? And it was just these really big questions. Which, when you've got your stable stuff going on, like this is my lovely routine, and like my kid goes to this school and Lenny's starting school in September here, and we love Budley and we're like set up in this is great. To then have the like, but you know, what if there was something else? Is actually maybe not fun sometimes, you know?
Yeah, that's so funny. What I'm hearing as you're talking, and I'm thinking of this like through the lens of your chart, is like your Sagittarius rising that wants like this expansion and, is really lit up by adventure and yeah, like different cultures and things like that. And then you've got like all these planets in Capricorn in your first house that are like, no, we like routine and it's like that conflict of the two. So it's like my question would be, yeah, how can you keep both happy? And then of course you've got Adam's chart like to take into account, It's like, yeah, it's
Exactly. And
hard.
Adam's a peacekeeper, like he's Libra, so he'll kind of go with the flow. And if I wanted to go, he'd go, and if I wanted to stay, he'd stay. And like, but he's also massively ambitious. So yeah, it's just, I guess, destabilizing, inspiring, and also like sometimes too many questions after holiday. Um, so yeah, it's just it brings up a lot, it brings up a lot relationship wise, it brings up a lot personally, future planning, it kind of throws a lot of stuff into question sometimes. So yeah, it definitely cracks us open, I'd say. What else do you struggle with then, Beck? Minus the kind of prep for holiday, a relationship kind of balance and load, what else do you think holidays stir up in you?
I think, as I've said, it's like that unspoken resentment. It is often the first thing that comes up for me. But then, like, after a day or two of being away and then having, yeah, the normal habits like having to cook, go to work, and all of that stripped away, like, then I start to relax a bit and soften, and the resentment, you know, will leave me at that point. Although there can still be oh, I'm still having to like organize this and organize that and make sure, the kids aren't arguing and that, yeah, and don't get me wrong, like Steve will do his bit with the kids on holiday quite well. But yeah, I think it's like then I tend to I go very like quite inward, I think, on holiday more so. So I tend to read a lot of books on holiday, and some of those are going to be like, yeah, like self-development books. Or well, I went on a whole deep dive on this holiday of reading so much stuff about like women in history because I'm doing a project on that at the moment, something that I'm going to be hopefully birthing into the world at some point in the future. And so I ended up like having like crazy dreams about, yeah, like stuff around that. And like, yeah, really like going on a journey within, and did a lot of journaling and things. So, yeah, I guess for me, yeah, I like holidays can bring up solitude as well, which I absolutely love. My kids are a bit older, so, they'll be off like in the pool or whatever, and it's just me and my book. And what I love is that solitude that I don't get a lot of in my day-to-day life. Um, yeah, I feel like I could go away for a week and not speak to anyone and be so happy.
And where do you see that in your chart? Which part of your chart shows that?
Well, I have Sagittarius sun, so I'm a Sagittarius, but it's like right at the bottom of my chart. So I have like this craving for adventure and expansion, but because it's at the bottom of the chart, it's like, yeah, it's more applied to like my internal psyche rather than wanting to travel, which are like the normal things that Sagittarius loves to do. So, yeah, I think it's there probably. It's like I have a lot of planets at the lower part of my chart, which are the bottom of the sky. It's like a lot about, yeah, inner work and inner journeying, inner transformation. So, yeah, so I love that kind of portal of being on holiday and having that time that I don't normally get. But I think then probably people around me find that hard, that I don't necessarily want to go and, you know, be social. I mean, don't get me wrong, like if I went away with my friends or when I go away with my mum, like it's a different, it's a different arrangement. But I think when it's family and I feel safe enough to, yeah, like I don't have to fill every moment with a conversation. I'd be your worst nightmare, Laura. You'd be like, oh my God.
I'd be your worst nightmare. You'd be like, shut up. We save it for the podcast.
Yeah.
I loved what you said back in your research about holidays being like not just an escape, but more of a pilgrimage. Do you want to say a bit more about that?
Yeah, that's how I've started to view my holidays a bit more, really. Is like they're not an escape. They can be an escape if you want them to be an escape, but they're not for me. Like, yeah, they're a pilgrimage. So I love to go away and do something where I get to know that place and connect with its energy. So we went to Cyprus and we went on a tour, and it was like in this Jeep, and we went to all these places that were, I mean, there were tourists there, but it was like really getting to know the land and the culture and the history and the ancestry. And yeah, we had this amazing tour guide, and he was telling us like about how Cyprus was like the physical representation of Aphrodite, and she was like born out of the sea foam. And then we went to these caves, and it was like Aphrodite's cave, and we went to all like these little churches, and it was really beautiful. So I love connecting with the culture and the energy. And, people might think like energy is like really woo woo. But I think when you travel to different places, like it's a really good way to discern and understand energy. It's like that feeling you get when you go somewhere. It can be subtle, but it evokes something in you. And then I'm just like really curious about like what that evokes in me. Like, why am I here in this place? What is it trying to show me? What it's trying to show me about myself as well. So yeah, I love that idea of like trying to cultivate it as like a journey and a pilgrimage. And also, as I've said, like it's about, yeah, for me, like very much connecting back with myself. And yeah, like for me, it doesn't necessarily really bring up the bigger questions that you've said about like moving somewhere. It's just, appreciating this experience as, yeah, what is it showing me? And what do I want? Yeah, what do I want for the future? But it's like, I don't know, it like then turns the whole trip into like a really sacred experience. So yeah, that's been something I've been working with on holidays for a little while. Yeah.
I love that. I love that for so many reasons. Like, probably because I'm obsessed with achievement. So if we frame like challenges on a holiday as like, a pilgrimage, like an opportunity to learn more about yourself, I just think it's a lovely framing because I do believe that, weirdly, Adam and I have come back and we felt so close, like closer than we did when we were away, closer than we did before we went away, because it did highlight cracks in our relationship. And we both committed to like healing those and completely committed to each other in that process. And I've noticed like the level of effort he's making having come home and like kind of, I suppose, regretted in some ways being distant on the trip. And I really appreciate that. And it has, instead of seeing that as I did like in the moment on the trip, like this is such a shame because it's such a short amount of time and like I don't want to be arguing with you. And instead reframing that as like that was really valuable in our relationship to have the space to almost have that experience, to take those lessons. Like I think it does give you the opportunity to view it slightly differently as it's all part of the journey and why you're being put there. And as like to your energy, your point about energy, I mean, we had this real moment where, I mean, we'd gone from, so we started in Santa Monica and everybody had said like, oh, Santa Monica's incredible, blah, blah. Phew. I mean, it was a grey day. They call it grey May. There was all this stuff that I didn't know about. And it was really grey. It was a bit like being, in London or Brighton when it's grey. Like it's just not really the same. There was a lot of homelessness. It was really, really dirty. And there was like these little, they looked like squirrels. And in the first instance, I thought they were quite cute, like chipmunks. And then on like the smallest patch of grass, there might be like 20 odd. And I was like, "Oof, this feels more like rats than cute chipmunks, right?" Just loads of homeless, loads of that, really smelly of all like the drugs that they take and the wee. And like, it wasn't what I expected it to be. And we went down Venice Beach. I mean, that's an eye opener. And like all fun, but there was this darkness, there was this sadness, there was this like emptiness that I really felt quite deeply. And then we went to Hollywood because it was like, I'd never seen that before and where we were so close. And that was just all real cheese. That was just like, okay, this is fun, but it's very shallow. And like, why are we kind of buying into this? But like, great, glad that I saw it, glad that we did the hike, fantastic memories. And then it was so different because we moved to Joshua Tree. So we drove like 3 hours out into the desert. And that is like the cowboy, like wild, wild west, I'd never seen anything like it. And it was like there's no one around because it's so hot. And we stepped out. So we drove to our Airbnb. And like, of course, on the pictures, it looks like, something out of Vogue magazine. But then to get there, we drove through these like caravan sites and quite like sporadically placed, all with like wire fences. And their gardens were just filled with like chairs that were half broken, like random chainsaws laying about, like dogs on metal leashes, like really aggressively, protecting their yard. And there were like a couple of those. And then our villa was only like 2 minutes away, and we were like, what is going on? And it was just this eye opener as to like how other people live in, like, it was 40 degrees, it's over 100 out there. It's unbearable, like in the desert, so dry. There's cars just abandoned because obviously, like, they get stuck on the rocks or whatever, that they're not made for it, and then people just leave them. So there's all these like deserted cars everywhere in the it's the most surreal thing. And then we got to our Airbnb, which is just like this little oasis, as somehow these people make them like spring up in the middle of nowhere. And it was absolutely gorgeous. And they had this yoga deck. So having like driven 5 minutes before through what was pretty terrifying, we went get to this little oasis, and Tors and I, we met because she was a member of the studio. That's how she introduced me to Adam. So there was something full circle about her and I being on this trip, like our time away from kids now, having her introduce me to ads, sitting in the middle of this yoga deck in, the desert. And she was like, I don't know what this is. And she's not very like spiritual, I would say. And she was like, I just feel this like gravitational pull. I feel like so pulled to the earth here. Like, what is that? And she looked at me to like give her the answer. And obviously we're in earth, it was the desert. It was just, there was land and there was no water. And it was just really something like echoey and more than grounding, like a pulling, like almost magnetic. Really hard to explain, but just, and because it's, there's just a few birds in the sky, there's like barely any trees, it's really like eerie, cars deserted. It was almost creepy. And I can't, it's really hard to explain how that feels, but there was this huge shift in energy from like Santa Monica to Hollywood to then there in Joshua Tree in the desert. And we went trekking in the national park, which is again just an extreme version of that, just desert. Being in the desert is quite humbling because it's so fierce and you're on your own. And then we moved from there to Palm Springs, which is like a gay capital, right? So there's like 50% of the population is gay. There's like palm trees everywhere. It's very like, there's a lot of that like gay pride stuff going on. It's all like smoothies and ice creams and cocktails and nightclubs. And again, just so different. So yeah, the energy in different places does play a huge impact. And I think when you're traveling, we were traveling in such a short space of time. It was like 1 to 2 days in each location. It's quite a gear change, which again can be destabilizing, I'd say. Like amazing to see it and feel it, but like it's a lot for your body and like frequency to adjust, right?
Yeah, and I think, yeah, people don't talk about this enough. And it's so interesting. You're talking about the earth, right? And how Tors has like felt that pull to the earth. Because in California, you're in California, right? Mount Shasta is the root chakra of the world, of planet Earth. So it said that through the energy lines that run through the planet, Earth has its own chakra system, and the root chakra is in Mount Shasta, but it's in California. So even, okay, like you're not in Mount Shasta, but you're going to be closer to that energy than, than you have been. So yeah, that pull to the earth, I feel, is probably to do with that.
And interestingly, when we were doing the hiking, it was like at some point we were like bouldering, we're literally like crawling up these rocks because us being us did not take the beginner's route. And I was like, this is me and
Another reason we can't go on holiday.
yeah, yes, fine. And so I was like, oh, here's me in my natural environment. I'm the goat, and like laughed.
So
And
funny,
then,
yeah.
but I remember Tors is born on Christmas Day. She's 25th, so she's also Capricorn, and Ollie's also Capricorn. So there was these three Capricorns, these three goats, like climbing, earthing in their environment, and then there's Ads and his little Libra just going along with like, whatever we want to do is cool. And it was really, yeah, the earthing part of it was a big part of that for sure.
Yeah. One of the places that I really love to travel to, and I've said to you, like, we have to go there, is Glastonbury. And Glastonbury is the heart chakra of the world. And if you go there, like, the energy is really intense. And I think that's another reason, like, I feel really rooted to the UK now that I know that. Obviously, I don't live in Glastonbury, but in the UK, we're very close to Glastonbury and that heart chakra. And at the moment, the third eye chakra is also in Glastonbury. The third eye moves around the world. And yeah, there are like these really important ley lines that run through Britain. And I feel very connected to it. And I think, yeah, some people's dharma or path is to move to a different part of the world. And yeah, mine is not. I feel like it's to just be connected to this land. And yeah, maybe, yeah, I'm not saying like I'll never travel, but I know I'll always come back. And I think, yeah, I think that's so fascinating. And in astrology, there's a branch of astrology. I don't know loads about it, but it's called astrocartography, and it's like it places your birth chart over the world, and it tells you like your Venus line is in a certain, well, it will run down the world. So it's like places where, yeah, you might want to live like on your Venus line for love and abundance and stuff like that. If you're living on your, I don't know, like your Pluto line, like it's probably going to be a challenging life for you to live. So it's definitely something I want to explore more.
Oh, I definitely want to explore that. That's so interesting. And isn't it amazing how? Because right where we were, because even when you're in the national parks, there's like Cella Cactus Garden, which we went to, which was incredible. I mean, in the desert, suddenly just springs up thousands of cactuses. So there's just nothing, and then just one by one, and then suddenly you're in a field of them. And they've got this like wooden pathway that walks through the garden of them. And it's Cella Cactus Garden, but it's so close to Coachella, the festival. And how funny that Glastonbury is, the part of the heart chakra, and then Coachella is like, somewhere within the root chakra. And it feels like it's not coincidence that people go to these places and feel this sense of connection, hence they're like how they take off, right?
Yeah, I sometimes think that, yeah, that's definitely the case, like you're tapping into that energy. But sometimes I think, festivals can be very interesting places in terms of like energy and what goes on at a festival. And sometimes I think they can be deliberately organized to be there in order to like distort the energy.
Mm.
What is that beautiful heart chakra of Glastonbury? You've also at Glastonbury, you've also got like some pretty horrible I would say is horrible music and horrible lyrics, and yeah, it feels like a bit of a distortion of the energy as well. So yeah, when we live on this planet that is like yin and yang, and yeah, it's just I haven't like done a huge deep dive into that, but it's just something that I often think. And you think about the throat chakra is in Giza in Egypt, and like about the pyramids there, and like how yeah, so much we don't know about the pyramids, and like the truth that the throat chakra, is about truth. and listening as well as speaking. So yeah, there's like messages from Giza that, and we're starting to hear this with I don't know if you've seen it in any on your social media or on the news, but like about the discoveries under now the pyramids that they're starting to make. And there's so many myths and legends about the pyramids, but yeah, I find that interesting that they're linked with the throat chakra.
It is, it's fascinating. I think being aware of your location is something that we just take for granted. You know, in the West, it can be so like, yeah, we live here because everyone lives here and here's my school and now I'm going on holiday and you go to an all-inclusive and we go on holiday. But I think it's nice just to tap into that depth a little bit more of, choosing where we are, realizing that it does have an energetic impact on us, that our chart can show us where is and isn't, you know, sometimes helpful or in flow with where we could be on holiday or where we could be living. Like all of these things just to kind of awaken us so that we're making more conscious decisions, right? Rather than just kind of doing what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, and I think moving away from like everything being a coincidence or everything being an accident, your birth chart is like a triangulation of like the time you were born, the place you were born as well. Um, so like it's no coincidence that you're born where you are because it's like your soul is making a decision that like that is the best place for you to incarnate in order to, and that can be a hard concept and feel like spiritual bypassing when we've got a lot of war going on, in the world. Like, why would someone choose to be born there? And that's like a rabbit hole I don't think I'll go down today. But yeah, it's like, that connection with being born there. Maybe you're born there so that you can meet a certain person and then you move somewhere else. I work with someone and she lived, well, she was born in South Africa. She lived in Dubai and now like she lives yeah, like in the Midlands. And I think, why is that? And she's had a child, but and that he was born over here. And yeah, like life is just like this tapestry that we weave. And of course our holidays or like our pilgrimages or the places that we travel to are going to be like part of that tapestry.
Yeah, I really felt that when I was away. It was like when I kind of cut through the noise and was able to stand back, because we were with so many people all of the time, as you are at a wedding. But when it's like a few days of that, it's a lot, you know. And even sitting down when we actually got placed on our table, so the guy to my right, who I'd never met before, and he didn't go to school with Adam, so nobody really knew him. And he said that he was in shipping and he'd lived in Singapore. I was like, oh, I have a friend from my school who was in shipping and in Singapore. I don't suppose you know them. And he looked at me, he was like, he's the godfather to my son, and he was the best man at my wedding. And I was just like, oh, we sent a photo and sent it to his friend. And it was again just one of those moments where I was like, wow, everything that's happened, even the challenges, have opened my eyes to ways that needed to be open. They created triggers that needed to be had. And like, again, it was just that reminder of like, even here, even the other side of the world with all these people, some who I don't know, some who I do know, Adam and I came together through these people, and now we're celebrating like love at a wedding of one of his friends, and all these coincidences are still happening. It's just that like real reminder of, yeah, it's all happening, for you,
Yeah, for sure. And isn't that so interesting? Because you've got like that connection with all his friends. And then you said earlier how like tours, she came to the studio and then she was the one that connected you with Adam. And then you're like, I don't know, it's like this fated point, right? In your timeline where even if you didn't meet him when you did then, I don't know, there would have been a different sliding doors moment at some point in the future because yeah, there's like that karmic energy of like what are you here to work on together?
It's funny we spoke about that when we were away, because often, we'd meet people and they'd say, oh, how did you meet Adam? How did you get together? And Victoria was there and we'd be like her. And then Adam and I have played it out. He always wanted to move to America. like he signed for Birmingham Rugby, and at that point he had an opportunity to go to America, and he wanted to get into the Premiership, so he stayed in the UK. But now with hindsight, he's like, maybe I should have gone to the US, and would we have still met? And he's always said, yeah, I think like however we would have, I think we eventually would have. But it is interesting to play those sliding doors. And then I think when you're at a wedding, and like weddings for me bring up something, I guess, different to holidays, but in a similar way, where they kind of hold up a mirror. You know, you're stood in front of two people and they're at this like pinnacle of love, and they're reading their vows to each other, and it's like, you know, you're the most perfect person on the planet and I want to be with you forever. And it was funny because I spoke to one of the other girls who was at the wedding, and I was like, what, you know, how did you feel at that moment, like about your partner? And because Ads and I were obviously bickering. And she was like, oh my God, I question everything. I always question everything when I'm at a wedding because it's so perfect. And the reality of relationships are not like that. And it makes you think, like, is mine wrong? Like, does everyone else feel like this? And it held up mirrors in so many ways, you know, of like all these different people around living in different places, and you know, and I think all of those questions actually needed to be asked for us to come back and go, no, no, I still choose you and this life. And what I'm excited about is where we go next. But yeah, sometimes that questioning is not easy, right?
Yeah, I think that definitely comes up at weddings. You know, there's so much emotion around. Um, yeah, so I definitely feel that. And I sometimes think if I knew everything that I know now, I don't know if I would have got married. I don't know if I would have made that contract with someone, because contracts are like serious, and I'm not saying like don't be serious. I'm saying, you know, they can, I believe they can transcend lifetime. So like promises you make in this life, like you carry that promise through your chakra system potentially into the next life. And it's like, yeah, yeah, I think we underestimate like the vows that we're making. Like you're kind of saying that, you know, we're making these promises and everything's perfect in that moment. And I think marriages can force people to stay together when if they hadn't made those vows. And I know in a way like that's the whole point, but it kind of takes away instead like the energy of, yeah, I'm just choosing to be with you every day without there being a contract, without there being like some law that says, you know, we have to stay together and then go through a legal process to not be together.
Mm.
So yeah, I do, and you know, let's face it, I'm not going to get divorced to then like still be in a relationship now, but it is something that I question sometimes.
I get that. I really get that. And something that well, actually Ketchog, the monk that I used to go to his lessons, one thing that always stuck with me was that he said our greatest lessons are to be learned at home. And it's because I was gonna, you know, I had my one-way flight booked to Australia, and I just wanted to like up and out after I broke up with Sam. Um, and that really stuck with me. It was like, yeah, I know it's hard here. It's supposed to be hard here because, you know, you're here to grow. And I kind of feel the same thing about relationships. It's like, yeah, I could get a ticket out of here, but like my growth is here.
Mm.
And yeah, it's harder here sometimes. But you know, what do I choose? Do I choose the easy life with less growth, or do I choose a harder life with more growth? Me personally, I'm all about the growth. So, you know, sometimes I question that. Should I just have an easier life and have more fun somewhere? Um, yes, you know, this has reminded me, and this is one of those weird books that I read when I was really young, and there was a question in it, and it said, and it was philosophy, so there was no right or wrong. Would you prefer to be a satisfied pig or a dissatisfied human? I honestly read that when I was like 16. I remember I was doing my A levels, we were on holiday, and I was like asking it to my friends, and they were like, what the hell are you talking about? And but isn't that true? Like, would you rather be, you know, a satisfied pig or a dissatisfied human? And I choose dissatisfied human every time,
Yeah, of course. Like, you know,
rightly or wrongly, right? And I'm not saying you're a satisfied pig if you get divorced. But I'm just saying that it's okay that if marriages are difficult, right? Because the greatest lessons are to be learned at home.
well, I just think we can't run away from our lessons because, yeah, you could choose, you know, you could choose a simpler life. Is it going to make you happy? And there's no guarantee that, you know, those bigger lessons that you're here to learn are going to follow you and you're going to have to learn them some way or another anyway. And if you don't, like, okay, there's the next lifetime. So yeah, I agree with you. Like it's all about evolution and healing, like healing being this idea of wholeness, like completeness, rather than trying to fix something. It's just like wholeness to me. And again, I link that to astrology because that's what astrology is. Like we've got the 12 signs of the zodiac, and it's like about creating balance of those signs. That's what we're trying to do, because they are like archetypes, and we're trying to balance those archetypes with us. You're trying to, with your Sagittarius and your Capricorn, you're trying to balance like the adventurer slash philosopher of Sagittarius with like the hard worker and the person that success is really important to, with your Capricorn energy. And then like where that is in your chart is like all in your first house, all of that. Well, and some of your second house, which is about how you create security, but it's self and security through those through those archetypes for you is a massive part of who you are and what you're here to do. So you could move away, but like you're still going to be asked to balance those archetypes, aren't you?
Yeah, totally. I really feel that. Like I feel that even without like seeing it on my chart. It's like that I can feel that tension in those areas. And like what we're talking about here from a yoga perspective, I find it so interesting how that's always at play. Like even, throughout these discussions, even when I'm on holiday and you think, how does that connect to yoga? But all of this psychology is what we call in yoga the svadhyaya, which is this self-study, just doing that all of the time. And some of the like tools and practices to use to kind of keep myself steady during those times and afterwards is this sense of like, dharana, which they call like focused attention, which is whether that could be on pranayama or breath or connection. I mean, doing yoga in those places just balanced me, finding my breath, sticking with the self-study, like even seeing it differently. You talk about like the warmth of sangha in yoga, which is like community, and there was definitely a sense of that. And of course that needs to be like balanced with not feeling overwhelmed by being around people a lot. But it's just realizing that all the time when we're doing this work, if you are into your yoga, it doesn't have to be that you're doing yoga poses. Like just observing your way of being, like using these tools and these techniques to ground you is practicing yoga. That is what yoga is. It's like learning tools to help us get through life. It isn't about, just focusing on these shapes on our yoga mat, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like astrology to me is yoga. It's self-study, it's connecting the dots. Um, and it's just another lens through which to do that. So yeah, I did my asana practice every day on holiday. It was just like so nice to roll out my mat and like get into my body and yeah, see how I was really feeling, once you sort of come back and get clarity on that, I think. So yeah, I agree with you.
It works wherever you are, no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, whatever heart chakra, if you're whatever chakra you're on in the world, whatever line, yeah, yoga can always bring you home.
Exactly. Well, thanks, Beck. Anything that you wanted to add to our holiday discussion today?
I don't think so. Yeah, I hope like our messages landed with people, because I think, yeah, coming back to that thing of like expectation of holiday being perfect, and yeah, often it's not, so yeah.
That's okay. And that's, maybe those are the lessons that need to be learnt on that pilgrimage, right?
Yeah. Thanks so much for listening to this episode. Your time is precious, and we truly appreciate you spending it with us. We look forward to having you join us again soon. So, take care, and we'll catch you in the next episode.